Story by RookieRobot. I was challenged to survive till next week for $10 million. This Friday didn't seem unusual at all. I woke up, went to work, and came home. When I walked inside, my wife was sitting on our couch and reading a book.
I left the mail on the counter. I was tired, so I decided to leave it up to you to look through it,
she said, smiling at me as I walked in. I chuckled to myself and began to sift through our mail. It all seemed normal, just boring old mail. But then I saw at the bottom of the stack of letters was a completely black envelope. Never seen a black envelope before. And while I suppose there is nothing inherently sinister about a completely black envelope, it still struck me as odd. So naturally I opened it. Inside was a document, folded twice. In the center section of the document was one paragraph. This is what it read. Dear Mr. Jones, we have selected you for a game, or rather a challenge. We challenge you to make it through next week. If you succeed, you will receive $10 million. Nothing will be taxed from your prize. Our organization has associates in high places. That's it. That's all you have to do. You fail the challenge if you commit suicide or opt out at any time by calling our number listed below. The challenge will begin on Sunday. Reseal and return this letter to your mailbox tonight if you choose to take our challenge. Best of luck, Z. Needless to say, I was perplexed. My wife Samantha could hear my laughter from the couch, walked over to me.
Are you laughing without me? As a very overpossessive wife, I must know what you're laughing about,
she said jokingly, whilst wrapping her arms around my torso and embracing me. I showed her the letter, and like me, she found it pretty funny.
Looks like you got a secret admirer, babe. Do I gotta worry?
She said, snorting with laughter. Definitely not. We stood there in our dining room, laughing like a couple of fools. Laughter turned to kissing, and kissing turned into making love on the couch. After several hours of cuddling and leftover Chinese food, we mutually started feeling very tired and decided to go upstairs to our bed.
Hey, babe,
Samantha said, stopping and turning around to look at me whilst walking up our stairs. Yeah? I said, leaning in close to her face while smiling. She leaned in even closer, if she were to kiss me, but instead whispered in my ear.
Put that letter in the mailbox or I'm never going to have sex with you again,
before running upstairs and giggling. When I got upstairs, I could see that our bedroom door was locked.
I'm serious. I want my $10 million,
she shouted from inside. So, feigning reluctance, I left. I went outside and received a letter and placed it back in my mailbox. Saturday passed like normal, and I had completely forgotten about the letter altogether. Until a few hours ago. You see, I'm very weird, and occasionally I go for late night walks on the weekend. I'm not entirely sure why, but it gives me a strange thrill that really gets my blood pumping. Why do I like the blood to be pumping late at night? I don't know, I just do. But anyway, at around 11 o'clock tonight, I went out for one of those late night walks. All was normal. It was a bit chillier than I expected to be, but I wasn't bothered by it. I was walking for a while when I thought I heard something in the bushes next to the sidewalk. I turned my phone to shine a light on whatever it was in the bush. We live in an area where coyotes are fairly common, and seeing one is always a special treat. If I was really lucky, I thought it could be a fox. I don't really remember what happened next. All I remember concretely was that when I turned my phone on, it was 12 a.m. exactly. Then a large, darkly clothed man leapt out of the bushes with a baseball bat. From then on, it was a blur. I can recall flashes. He must have had a knife with him too, because I remember laying in a pool of blood. Next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. I won't bore you with the details of my hospital stay. Samantha was obviously distressed about the situation. I got a concussion and a small slash in my arm, blah blah blah. There's a lot of unusual things about the scenario, however. The bastard didn't take anything. Nothing at all. Not my phone. My screen was cracked just a little when I hit the ground, which pissed me off. Not my wallet, or even my cool jacket. Honestly, I was a little offended that he didn't take any of my stuff. Another weird thing is that our neighborhood isn't exactly a dangerous one at all. We live in a nice neighborhood, in fact. Things like this just don't ever happen. The real estate agent who was selling the house next to us even came into my room to beg me not to publicly talk about the incident, because he feared that the elderly couple moving in might catch drift that we live in a sketch neighborhood, and decided to back out at the last minute. I obliged him. He seemed like a very nervous guy. He was around my age, and I felt bad for him. Perhaps the oddest thing about the situation was the 911 call that got the ambulance to pick me up. The bastard who conked me on the head used my own phone to call the ambulance, and yet he still didn't take my phone. I'd call it a crime of passion, but I'm fairly well liked and haven't pissed anyone off too terribly. It was late, so they decided to let me stay the night, which would be great for our insurance bill this month, but whatever, I was tired. Something was bugging me, though. I started thinking of the letter I had received Friday night. The challenge was supposed to start Sunday, which was today. The one thing from the attack I remember vividly was the time. 12 a.m. exactly. It's probably all some weird coincidence, but I still find it off-putting. My phone's about to run out of battery and I don't have the charger at the hospital, so I'm going to wrap this up. I've decided that I'll write an update for every day in this week, just to keep you guys in the loop. Good night. Hey everyone, I'm back. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for the amount of support and advice I've received. It's honestly mind-boggling how much interest so many people have taken in my situation. Secondly, I just want to clear some things up. I seriously doubt my wife has anything to do with this. We've been married for 7 years now, and I know her better than myself. She's a real jokester. Sometimes she tends to run with jokes. Like last night when she made me send a letter back. That was done jokingly. But based on other things that have happened today, I'll be careful. Shit's gone down. Speaking of which, thirdly, I should have listened to your advice. I should have run. Since I had a minor concussion, I was put on the brain rest today, so I had to stay home for work. At around 5 a.m., I woke up and decided to go home and sleep in. I forgot to turn my alarm off, though, and I woke up at 6 a.m. Great. I have one of those really annoying alarms that makes it impossible to go back to sleep. Samantha was still somehow asleep, though, so despite my desire to go back to sleep, I got up. I went downstairs to scramble me some eggs and toast. After eating my subpar breakfast, I heard my back door unlock and slowly open. What the fuck? Armed with a butter knife, I crept towards the back door. Once I leaned against the wall and peeked around the corner at my back door. It was standing wide open, but I couldn't see anything. Your mother sucks in hell! I hear a low, gravelly voice shout behind me. As a knee-jerk reaction, I swung around, jabbing the butter knife into my assailant's head. I hit and knocked him onto his back. I managed to get a good look at the bastard this time. It was the same man. I could tell from his build and clothing. It was a tall, bald, and buff Caucasian man. He got up, and I got to marvel at how tall he truly was. He nearly hit the ceiling with his head. Blood was dribbling down his forehead from where it had hit him. His face was twisted into a nasty snarl. I really thought I was going to die. He charged at me and knocked me down, but instead of killing me, he proceeded to run out the door. Samantha came rushing down the stairs and ran over to me. Sam was hysterical, and it took a while for me to convince her not to call the police. I didn't want to get the police involved because, as several people mentioned, these people organizing the challenge have the resources to give $10 million to somebody. They certainly have a lot of influence. Basically, I don't trust the police. After thinking about it for a while, I realized he obviously didn't plan on killing me. He could have easily strangled me to death or stomped on my face when I was down. All he did was quote The Exorcist. Then it hit me. I immediately told Sam that I had to go. I got in my car and left for the town's mental hospital. I hadn't visited her in years. I wasn't very close to my mother. I came from a troubled home that I didn't care to get into detail about. But my father wasn't the nicest, and he left my mother mentally drained. Eventually, she had to be institutionalized. I walked up to the front desk and asked to see my mother.
Well, sir, we don't usually see visitors this early,
the secretary said. Please, I'm super busy later. I really want to see my mother. The secretary let out a sigh and,
"Well, since you haven't seen your mother in a long time, sir, I guess I can let you see her. She might not be too happy to be woken up this early in the morning."
an orderly was called down, and together we walked down the corridors of the facility. Finally, we made it to her room. The orderly opened the door, and immediately she shrieked. My mother was lying in a pool of her own blood on the ground, her intestines spilling out. On the wall in her blood was written the words, "Still want to play?" I felt sick. The scene was grisly. I went to the bathroom and immediately vomited into the toilet. The police and ambulance arrived there fairly quickly and asked me a few questions. They cleared me and sent me home. I decided not to tell Sam about what happened. I was dazed and confused. I sat in my bathtub for about an hour. Eventually, I pulled out my phone and typed the number on the letter. I legitimately considered calling it, but then after a while I decided against it. Call me stubborn, but I'm not the type to give up. I won't let them win. I'll make it longer than 2 days. I'll make it the whole damn week. So long as I kept Sam and I safe. I realized that I couldn't do that by staying here. I asked Sam if we could go camping. It eventually devolved into me begging, but she agreed. She saw how distraught I was and gave in. We don't have any camping supplies, so tomorrow I plan on picking some up from the next town over. There's some fairly large camping grounds right outside that town, and there aren't really any sports shops in my town, and there's no way in hell I'm shopping at Walmart. I did, however, go to a local gun store and buy a small handgun, just in case. I detest guns, but I'm trying to stay safe, and several of you suggested it. I'm going to sleep now. I'm exhausted from today. Good night, guys.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing. And if you're an animal lover like me, please consider donating to the World Land Trust, a charity that aims to help wildlife through buying land, preventing development, and helping endangered species.